Hey guys, it's cyoubx, and today I have the sequel to one of my other videos called Why You're Not Sub-20. This one is Why You're Not Sub-15. It's going to be the same similar format as the last video, and hopefully you guys find this insightful. Let's first take a look at some of the things that were done correctly in this solve compared to the last solve. Even though the solve wasn't sub-15, you'll notice that it's far below 20 seconds, and a lot of that has to do with huge improvements from the last video that I made. One of the first major improvements in this particular solve is the use of inspection time. The time it took me to look at the four pieces for the cross was a lot faster than the last solve. Now, although that's a good thing, that's also one of the things that's inhibiting this solve from being sub-15, which I'll get into a little bit later. The inspection could have been used a little bit more wisely, but this was still really good for planning out the cross. In my last video, I said that all crosses should be done in 8 moves or less. One of the great things about this particular solve is that the cross was done really quickly, and that's something that you always want to keep in mind. A really efficient cross is a really good way to get a head start in the solve. There was nothing advanced I did here for the F12 pairs, but I would say as a whole, the F12 here was actually pretty strong. The look ahead wasn't the best that it could have been, but as far as goals for sub-15, the recognition here is more than you need. Just a quick note here, in my last video I was using look OLL. At this point it's really your choice whether or not you want to learn full OLL. It's not needed for sub-15, but it definitely helps you just a little bit if you do take the initiative and learn full OLL. Now that we've taken a look at some of the really good improvements that we've made since the last video, it's time to look at some of the things that weren't that good. There were a lot of things here that weren't really that great, and had these things been improved upon, sub-15 would have been really easy for this particular scramble. Now this isn't a comprehensive list of everything that could possibly go wrong in solve, but this is a really good place to start. So I touched upon this a little bit earlier. The inspection was really good for the cross here, but since the cross was so easy and there was so much time left, I probably should have looked for the first F12 pair. In this particular solve, the cross F12 transition was horrid. So seeing as I had that much time left, I could have easily found the first F12 pair and planned that out to limit the cross F12 transition time. So this next tip is really important, probably the most important in this entire video, and that has to do with the cross F12 transition. Even in my solves, I haven't really mastered this. If you've seen any of my solves, you know that I sometimes have a huge pause between the cross and F12, the first F12 pair. There are a lot of ways to minimize this, but for this particular solve, I touched upon this a little bit earlier. You really need to use your inspection time to plan out your first F12 pair if you can. Now, in the event that you have a really difficult cross that you're working on, and you just don't have enough time to find your first F12 pair, what you really should do is immediately after the cross, try not to do cube rotations to find pieces. The chances of you finding a good pair that you can use on the top face and the front face is really high. But if you don't see anything viable, then even without doing any cube rotations, just pull out the pieces from the back slots. Just one of the two pieces from one of the back slots will do. And just use that to see if you can build your first F12 pair and start working on look ahead. I did mention in the good part of this video that the F12 here was really strong, and it is strong, but To make it even better, I probably could have shaved off 1 or 2 seconds off of the F12 just by turning more slowly and pausing less. A lot of people think that jerky movements plus pauses looks kinda cool, and I myself used to really like that, but if you want to get a really good time, do slow turning, even for sub-15. Obviously turn a little bit faster than what you did for sub-20, but you don't need anything that's that fast. 4 turns per second to 4.5 turns per second, depending on how good your F2L is, will get you sub-15, provided that you have a good enough cross and last layer. This final tip is also really important. Looking at other solves that people have done, I think a lot of people do use in U primes on their final PLL just to recognize the case that they have. You don't need to do that. In this case, I had an R perm. What you do is you look for blocks on headlights. So I see a pair of headlights, and one of the headlights is connected to a 1x1x2 block. So that's very characteristic of an R perm. The other thing that you can look at is colors. So for instance, if I see a 1x1x2 block, or sorry, 1x2x2 block, which basically looks like a square, that's characteristic of both an A perm and a V perm. To tell them apart, you look for opposite colors. On an A perm, the corners adjacent to that block are going to be the same color. On a V perm, they're going to be opposite colors. And so that's a really easy way to identify which PLL case you have without even doing a single cube rotation and or AUF. So, just to recap, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to use your inspection time wisely. At this point, you're probably pretty good at finding your cross pieces, so you have some extra time left over. Try to find your first F12 pair, if you can. If not, never use a cube rotation to find pieces you need for your first F12 pair. If you have to, just pull out some back slots and see if you can find pieces from there. As you're doing your F12, look ahead is still better than recognition. You're going to need both for sub-15, but don't rely only on fast recognition for good times. You're going to need to look ahead in the long run anyway, so you may as well just work on it now. As far as turning goes, slow turning is still better than fast turning. Obviously, fast turning with no pauses is your best bet, but that's really difficult to do. So try slow turning with no pauses, and I guarantee you'll do better with that than you will with fast turning and with pauses. The last final step for you to maybe get sub-15 is to learn your OLLs and PLLs from all angles. Look for your headlights, blocks, and colors, and try not to do cube rotations or AUFs to find the things that you need. None of these things alone will probably get you sub-15 times, but all of these things together make the difference between a 14-second solve and a 16-second solve. Now, obviously, you may not have all of these things to improve upon, but if you do, then I highly suggest you follow all of these tips, because that really will make a difference in your times. I didn't just make these things up. I actually watched other people's videos, and I noticed that a lot of the people were doing the same things that I covered in this video. So hopefully this video helped you, and if you guys would, check out my Facebook, and if not, please check out my blog. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, toodles.